It's not
Yeah,
recording.
yeah, it is. It is recording right now. All right, so all right, this is from the last class. We're gonna go ahead and start a new one. All right, guys, so let's do more of the interactions like last time. I think it's more enjoyable when we do it together. So the first one of, so let's, again, I'm gonna go ahead and break down all three LCs, right? Life cycles. So when it comes about, okay, so, okay, I'm gonna keep the outline here so that I can follow that on the other screen. Okay. All right. Before we go into the outline, first of all, who can tell me software testing? What does it really mean? What do you really do when it comes about software testing? Now, I'll give you the proper answers, but what is software testing in your mind? Who wants to take that?
In
All right.
simple, we can say that software testing is to make sure that the application or the software is bug free,
Okay.
defect
And how do
free.
you, sure. And how do you make sure that it's defect free?
By testing.
Okay. And then when you test, what do you do?
Like, shall I start from the beginning, like from requirement and then test plan, then test scenario like this?
So those are the process, STLC process. But if you say simplest way, you can say you will basically match the expected, right,
With the
requirement
actual
to,
result.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So you're comparing expected and actual. So when it comes about software testing, guys, it's not about the answer coming from us. Like we have to go into the application. For example, let's go to JetBlue real quick as just another example. So we come in here to this website. It doesn't have to be like, oh, wow, we need to make sure such and such works. And like, for example, this feature where you select a specific destination from and to, and then you have some time, depart and return, and then click this, right? So now notice what I just did, right? I click on search, but I didn't enter the destination and I didn't enter the date, right? And it's basically giving me these messages, right? These are called the field validation message, right? So it says, please enter a valid city, please enter a valid date, please enter a valid date, right? For both. Now if this is something was not in your requirement, then you would have to clarify and say, hey, these are the message, do we want them to see, or this is the message that we don't want to see? Because even if it's not mentioned, you have to ask. But typically they will say, okay, we want this error message when they enter such and such information. And now what we will do, we will create our documents. There are few, and we talked about that in STLC, in order to create our test cases. So in this case, let's say I put some garbage in there, right? And you see, notice it doesn't even takes it, right? I click on enter, nothing happens, right? Okay. So a user can do whatever they want, but then the application should be able to handle those kind of action, right? It should only take actions that is something that the application is expecting. So just keep that in mind. We as a tester, we coming in, not only that we test it, but we try to break it. So we see what is the parameters, what is the boundaries that's given to us. The boundary could be like, okay, if the to destination, the customer do not click on browse and find, let's say, a specific, or if it doesn't match with a specific state and or a location, if it's like garbage like this, then you should never take that answer, period, right? So now I can not only just enter all the special characters, but I can also try entering like numbers, right? And see what happens. I can try alphanumeric also, right? So these are different test cases I'm talking about. I can try with characters, valid characters with invalid, right? Characters which are special characters, right? I can also try a location that doesn't exist, right? It could be like something like, so you see, like as soon as I entered, it gave me all the suggestion. So let's say this doesn't exist. This location doesn't exist. Right away, the requirement was to make the outline red and, and pretty much show that message that it's not exist right there. Okay. So this is something that we'll be testing. So in general, when it comes about testing, we're comparing with expected result and actual result. Okay, we get the expected result from where? We get the expected result from the user story or the requirement. Our job is to compare to make sure it is doing the right thing. But aside from that, we can also do additional testing, which is to see, look at the parameters, look at the boundary, what extent we're expecting certain answer, and we can go beyond that boundary, try to find unexpected behavior and how our application is handling those unexpected behavior. Okay, but in short, testing is basically a method to check whether actual software product matches the expected requirement. So you go into the application. If it's a manual testing, you go into the application, you physically try that a specific feature and see if it does what it was mentioned on the requirements. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then so let's talk about the key fundamentals. So what is testing? Why is testing important, guys? And these are the questions we covered in the very beginning on our slides. So that's why I'm going to ask you those questions and I'm going to try to correct you guys today, right? If you get it wrong. So why is software testing such an important thing in a development team? Who wants to answer that question? So why, guys, who would like to take? Why is it important, first of all, right?
Software testing is saving, I guess, time. I'm sorry, money in the long run. It could potentially save lives. So it is very important.
Right. And if you really think about it, let's say a big company like Chase Bank, Bank of America, or maybe Delta Airlines, they want to save money. Maybe like it's going to take them 50 QA engineers like yourself to go and test. But instead they said, okay, you know what? We're going to save that salary. How much might be that salary? It's not a lot. It can be more than $1 million, right? For that year. If they give everybody, let's say, even for 6 months, if they give 100, that's like 100,000 each, right? For 6 months, it's going to be like 50,000 per person that is getting for testing, right? But let's say they spend $10 million on testing. That is still money saving because let's say United Airlines on their, and I'm going to talk about non-life threatening kind of situation, right? So on their regular flight reservation page, they made a lot of enhancement and they said, okay, we don't need to test that. We're fine. We're going to be okay. Let's not spend money on testing. Let's just spend money on development, right? And they did that. So now after the release, now that nobody can sign up, nobody can actually book a ticket. Let's say even for 2 hours, nobody can book a ticket. Even Expedia cannot connect to the database of United Airlines. Sorry, Delta Airlines we're talking about, right? Yeah, Delta Airlines. Even any other third-party companies, brokers that sells tickets, they cannot connect to that, therefore they cannot sell. In that 2 hours, just imagine how many people are in emergency situation where they have to fly. They have to buy a ticket. They have to get there. They need to buy the ticket. Think about how much money they're losing in just 2 hours. Just 2 hours. And I'm not talking about the whole day. Now, if they didn't even test the whole product, that 2 hours can extend to 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, because who knows what happened, right? Who knows, one problem is going to lead to the second problem and the third problem, and the developers have to go and fix one to the other. And there is messy situation, right? There was no gatekeepers in the very beginning. So therefore, I can imagine it will be a very messy situation, because now a airline is out of business. The whole entire airline is out of business. And even if it's for 2 hours, 3 hours, they're losing millions, if not billions of dollars. So now let's say they lost maybe millions, maybe they lost $100 million for 2 hours, but they will lose another 100 million in maybe like in their shares and stocks, because it's going to fall through. It's going to start falling. It's going to be slashed in half because they realize the company is not following a best practice. What do you think the investors are going to do? They're going to say, oh, we'll take our money and we'll put it somewhere where they actually care about their product and customer, right? So you will see that spiral effect. You will see that domino effect where everybody's just taking their money away from the company, and the company is going to eventually lose a lot of money. So that's just a non-life-threatening situation I'm talking about. If we are talking about more on the dangerous situation, space, we're talking about DNA, we're talking about, LASIK surgery, all of these where there is some sort of software is being used and they haven't tested, right? That's just like, it's not even possible, right? You can't even imagine what can happen, right? The company will run out of business. The company will bankrupt. Most importantly, they may get, from the government, they may also get penalized. So that's one of the reasons why it's important. Now, let's talk about why most companies in the United States is required to have you guys, right? To have QA engineers. It's because number one, compliance. Okay. So if I'm a bigger company and I lend money to a smaller company and I'm invested on them, I will tell them, make sure you guys follow all the best practices, make sure you guys do this. And I will have auditors going into the company to make sure that everybody's doing the right thing. Now, there are government auditors also, right? If the company dealing with other countries, right? Different countries where different things are, different businesses are taking place, the government will send their, experts to check what are the process. Likewise, healthcare also, HIPAA will almost 100% of the time, HIPAA will require for healthcare company to have QA. And most importantly, in healthcare, they're going to also track to see what happened to the story from the day the story was created to all the way the story was done, right? They will see the logs, meaning when the story was created, who was the tester, who was the developer, who was the project manager, all of that will be logged under a single user story for auditing purposes. But also many companies, they have independent auditors coming in to make sure that as a company, they want to do the right thing about development, and they will also make sure they hire independent contractors coming in and just basically digging through all that and finding where, if everybody's following, all the teams are following the right approach of development process. So that's one of the reasons why QA engineers, QA testing, and there are many reasons, right? Obviously, I cannot stress enough about the importance of testing. Think about it. You as a company, are you going to just go ahead and release a product without knowing it's working or not, and you're charging people money? You can't, right? So simply, just talking about life-threatening and just talking about losing money is not the only reason. It's also about like logical thing, right? You don't even know if the product is. So it has to be tested. And software testing is important is because, again, they need unbiased opinion. They need second sets of eyes, because I can say, let's say I'm a project manager, I can say all of my developers, they're well capable of testing as well. So they're going to test their own work. What are some of the things that can go wrong if developers do their own testing? Who wants to give me some educated guess? Okay, don't just tell me, just make some educated guess, and then we can move on. So who wants to?
I'll try.
Sure.
Normally, like if you are doing the work, it's everything looks too good, like good to you, because it's very hard to find your own mistake. And if somebody else sees your like work, it's very easier for them to find their thing that's something very new. So it's one way, like if developer even doing their work, it's not always easy to find out your own mistake.
That is one, right? I mean, you're right about finding your own mistake, because your mind becomes biased, right? Now that is your child, that is you build these specific features and functionality, and you really passionate about it because you spent the last 3, 4, 5 days, sleepless nights to just create it. And that's really the truth, right? Developers, like when they start working on something, they become really addicted, meaning they want to see it through. They want to get it done. They want to see their features working. So they write code, day and night, and then they may take, the next couple of days off, but they will work relentlessly and work really hard to build it. And they, in their mind, will think everything is working perfectly. Sometime they will go off of the requirement because they think, oh, this is better than what they were asking, right? But that's not what we want. We want to get what they are asking, period. We don't want anything better. We don't want anything, under what they're asking. So now that is one of the reasons, but there are many other reasons. Second sets of eyes also matters. Like you as a developer, maybe, tested and everything, and you are exhausted. You already spend a lot of time looking into the feature. You already went and tested and all that stuff. But when you test it, it's going to be different than somebody else, because when you test it, you already know the feature well, and you may do shortcuts, right? You may get to the feature in very different workflow than somebody who just doesn't know the feature, who is naive. So basically, tester, right? As a QA, you could be the naive person because you don't know the code base. You don't know what happened under the hood, right? So we go just like a user. We're basically still happy. We go like, okay, let's see. We're very curious. We're asking questions. We're looking at it. And we have all the time in the world because as a QA, we are not to rush. In a team, you will realize that QA engineers are not being rushed ever, right? And even if they're rushed, you'll see the project manager is going to jump in and say, hey guys, let's not do that. Or even you'll see QA managers is going to be defending you, like, no, Evelina didn't finish. She needs a few more days. So they're basically going to push back behalf of their QA engineers or QA analysts, right? So the QA lead, again, they will push back like, no, we're not done. We're not done, because it's all about doing the right thing, even if it takes that extra 2 or 3 days. On the development side, they will just say, when is it done? When is it done, right? And they're just going to probably try to rush them. But as a QA, we don't get rushed. So it definitely helps us with the extra time to do more testing. But most importantly, when it comes about placing your product out there to the world, anybody can do anything, right? Here, anybody can enter anything they want. But now if the system takes this information, for example, right here, and now it breaks the whole application because this was not expected, and it doesn't know how to handle it, and puts the whole company out of business for a couple hours, that these are a few things that we're going to be checking as well. Okay, so just keep in mind. The benefit of software testing is the next thing I want to talk about. And then we're going to go into types of testing that we do, right? So the benefit of software testing is basically you find the issues as early as possible. You also find the issue before going into a production like environment where user has to see that issue, right? User is already a paid customer, for example, end user, and you don't want them to have any sort of negative, feedback for that application. It is cost effective. The sooner you fix the bug is going to be the lesser the cost. Security is another one, right? Product quality, we just talked about, and customer satisfaction. These are the key important things that will be the benefits of software testing, okay? And the type of testing. So let's talk about type of testing, guys. I'm going to go ahead and write those down. So the first one that you will probably be responsible in a team. There we go. Number one is functional testing. Oh, why is it? So what is functional testing, right? So number one is functional. Number two, and I'm classifying these testing types in 3, maybe 4 different ways, and then we will talk about those. Non-functional testing, right? And then we have maintenance also. So maintenance testing basically going to include some testing types as well, but these are the 3 classifications that so far that I have put out there, right? So functional testing, what do you think functional testing is? And we can go from there. So functional testing, again, there are different types. So I'm going to go ahead and start writing some of these for you guys. Let me get some of the shapes. Maybe it's going to help us. Okay, and so I'm going to list them here starting from here, and the non-functional I may just list it somewhere else. So just at the end, the idea is that at the end we're going to share this. Let me go ahead and change the color. So these are different type of testing, and we're going to talk about it. Functional testing is what, guys? What do you think? Educated guess. Come on, it has a name, functional, on it. So that's like your hint right there. All right, I'll give you guys a few more seconds to think about. So functional testing is basically just testing the functionality of the application, right? But that's not simply it. That's just the answer, plain, without having any explanation. The functional testing is basically anything on the application where a user does something and the system does something in return, right? You're validating that I did these few steps in the application, and at the end, you're validating that if the outcome of those actions are valid and it was done properly, okay? So number one is unit test, right? Unit test is basically not done by us, right? It's done by the developer. So developers will be responsible for unit testing, because unit test is, the meaning of unit test is basically saying we want to test the code. Okay, so any formulas developer creates, any methods that developer creates will be done by unit test. Okay, so when the feature is developed and released to QA, to us basically for testing, just know that it was tested. It was also tested by developer before they even giving it to you. So don't automatically jump the gun. Take your time and then and test more, and then tell them like, hey, maybe there is a issue on the server or something, but I see that literally everything is broken. So then developers can confirm whether it's broken because of his code or is broken because the server has an issue. So we don't want to accuse them directly to say, hey, whatever you did, nothing is working, okay? Or your feature is not working. That's like the worst thing you can say to a developer. What is not working, right? So there will be a lot of questions from his side as soon as you say your feature is not working, right? You want to say exactly, you want to pinpoint what is happening and just, hey, I'm seeing these issues here, a list of issues that I'm seeing. Do you have some time to talk about them? I just feel like these are really large sets of issues. So it's better to get on a meeting and then you can just go from there. Like imagine you found like 20 issues. Are you going to create 20 bugs? You know, it's just a lot of time. Each bug may take 10, 15 minutes. So before you even jump the gun and start creating those bugs, it's better to ask him, better to go and sit down with him and say, hey, let's talk about those issues. If you agree, then I'm going to create the bugs. All right, which is much better than creating the bugs and giving it to them. And now he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot. I didn't deploy. I didn't release my code. My code is still here. So that means all the time that you're trying to test, his code wasn't even there, right? So just keep that in mind. The other thing is that sometimes you'll jump the gun and you'll test it. Everything's working. And you go and tell him like, hey, yeah, I tested your feature, it's working. And he comes and tells you like, that's not possible. I didn't even release my code in QA. So very, very, very careful, right? We don't want the integrity. We don't want any discomfort or any distrust happens in QA. The trust from the whole team, you'll have to gain within the first 3 to 4 months by doing the work. Okay, so never ever do anything that will tell them that, okay, this QA might not do the right thing or he's not doing the right thing. Because our job is to make sure that we are holding developers accountable for any sort of issues that we find. But imagine like you're that person, you're a very nice person and you don't want anybody, you know, upset or anything. So you jump the gun, right? You go and look at the feature, you test it, and we're like, oh man, what could go wrong? Looks like everything is fine. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it. And the developers come like, hey, I saw that you passed my story, but you know, I wasn't finished. Or you know what, it's not even done. I didn't push the other half of the code. So if he was nice enough, he will say, okay, test it again, then let me know. Or he'll say, okay, how are you even testing that? Because it's not even there for you to do anything. And you'd be like, oh, okay, I'm so sorry. Like that's just becomes weird now because how did you even test it, right? So that's why I would say never ever, you know, everything is a bug until it's proven it's not, right? So you'll treat everything as an issue until you test it yourself and it's working, then only then. If somebody says, go ahead and pass this, you're gonna say, wait, I'm sorry, I didn't test it. If you didn't test it, you're not gonna go ahead and pass it. So keep in mind. So now let's talk about integration testing, which is number 2. Integration testing is when you have two softwares talking to each other. When you have two different parts of the software talking to each other. And if they are working well, right? If they're working properly, then that will be integration testing. So for example, if you have, let's say, if you're working for Chase Bank and the teller system is a different software than when you log into your iPhone, it's a different software, right? For your bank. So when the teller actually deposits some money, it should automatically update your account, and that account should be also reflecting the same changes on your iPhone app, right? So that might be integration testing, right? Where you want to see that the changes are taking effect everywhere else, right? Both the communication between two different parts of the software is working as expected. But let's look at it, guys. Definition also matters, right? So let's look at the definition. So unit testing, I think we need to also look the definition first, and then unit testing is a software development process in which smaller testable part of an application called unit are individually and independently scrutinized for proper operation, right? So what's that means is that you take the small unit of the application and you give as much stress as possible, meaning you give all the possible inputs that it can take and see what is the output of that, you know, of that specific feature or a specific unit. if the unit can handle it or not. Again, we don't do that testing, but just know who does it is developers. Okay. Then the next one that we talked about, integration testing. Integration testing is, let's look at the definition and then I'll give you my explanation. But at any time you don't understand, feel free to stop and say, can you explain it again? So we got the integration testing, also known as integration and testing, which is INT. It is a type of testing in which the different unit, module, or component of the software application are tested as combined entity. That means maybe developers are working on different part of the application. They're working on 2 different modules, and both modules have their own function and they do very unique things, but they also work as a whole. So the idea is to put them together and then do the testing to make sure they're working combined, right, as expected, right? So just remember that unit testing. Then we get the smoke testing. And you'll probably hear smoke testing all the time because that'll be part of your daily, or that will be part of your weekly release as well. So we'll talk about that, why is the case. So smoke testing is a software testing process that determines whether deployed software build is stable or not. So if developer says, hey, we deployed everything to QA today, this morning, you're going to go and do a smoke testing. And you're going to tell them if you find something that is really blocker or anything like that, right? So smoke testing is basically you go and you test major part of the application to make sure that application is still healthy. It's like a health check, right? It's a health check for the application. Now, smoke test cases can be a combination of test cases. You can have multiple test cases that are dealing with major part of the application. And those are going to be in a suite, or those are going to be in a folder for you to say, okay, we're going to always run these test cases if we want to check health of our application. And you know what? Let's give these test cases a name. These are called smoke suite or smoke test cases, right? Or smoke testing. So anytime in your company, somebody says, hey, can you do a smoke test real quick and tell me if it's working properly? Then you can go to the application and start doing smoke testing, which doesn't mean you go to the application, you start clicking and doing something on your own. It just means that go find all the test cases that are classified as smoke test, and then go each test case at a time and test that. And the reason why you want to follow the test cases is because it will have the outcome in writing, what you're supposed to expect. So you don't have to guess around. You don't have to guess and say, okay, is this the logo we should have? This is the right image. What about this unlocked deals? Is this link still valid for 20%, right? You don't have to guess around. You don't have to guess around because the documents is there. The test cases, the reason why we write test cases is because we would be able to go back and test those again. So just keep that in mind. So we talked about smoke testing. Let's talk about the next one, which is UAT. So we talked about UAT testing also. So that's actually user accept and testing. Okay. So now UAT testing is something that we typically don't do, right? We are not the one who's going to do UAT testing, and is because UAT testing should be done by the person who created the user story, somebody who asked for that feature. Okay. So if they said, I would like, as a user, I would like to have this and that and this, their wish list, they are the one who's going to do UAT testing because they want to make sure that they got what they wanted. Okay. But we as a QA are the one who tested it. So maybe UAT tester will come back and ask you the question because you are the tester, right? So they will say, hey, how are you able to test this? Can you show me how did you do this? And then you're going to show them, but sometimes they'll just say, give me a demo of the whole feature. So you're going to go and sit down, and you're going to go and walk him through, or walk the UAT tester through the whole feature and functionality. And then once they understand, they may just pass the story. That's it. They don't have to do the testing. They don't. you already did extensive testing, so there is no need for duplication of work effort, but they will want to make sure that they got what they wanted. Okay, and maybe the demo will help them to understand this is exactly what they were looking for. Okay, so these are the few testing type we want to talk about. The next one is actually regression testing. Okay, and regression testing, and then there are several more testing types. We'll talk about them later, but at least on the functional side, we'll talk about these as a whole, because these are the ones that you'll be dealing with most of the time, minus UAT and minus unit test. So now regression testing is what? Let's look at the definition. All right, there is many definition, but most importantly, we look at this one. Usually this one is a good one, but anyway. So regression testing refers to a type of software testing that is used to verify any modification or update in a software without affecting overall working functionality of the said software. So which means is that whenever you have added a new feature, new functionality, or modified existing feature and functionality of the application to make it better, maybe make it much better than what it was, you want to make sure also these added features, this new functionalities do not break existing features and functionality somewhere else in the application or within that specific section of the application. Okay, so you're just basically making sure that, yes, we added a new thing in the application, but that doesn't really create problems for any other functionality in the whole application, right? So how do you make sure that that doesn't happen? You do regression tests. So then now the regression tests are basically a test suite that you classify, just like what you did for smoke testing, where you took major part of the application. So any test case that deals with major part of the application, you chose them to be smoke test, right? For regression tests, you're going to go into those major part of the application, but now not only that you're going to take those, but you're going to also take test cases that goes in deeper in the functionality. So basically, smoke testing typically 20 minutes or 30 minutes of testing. And then regression becomes 4, 5, 6, 7, even a couple of days worth of testing, depending on how many test cases you have in your regression suite. So regression suite is basically to make sure not only that it's checking for health, but it's also making sure that it checks the health of each and every single major feature of the application. Okay, now question to you guys. Okay, this is very important. Who wants to explain to me what is the difference between regression tests and smoke tests? Now that we talked about this.
I'm going to take a crack at it. Let's see if I got this
Sure,
right.
sure, go for it.
So regression testing is testing any functionalities, I guess, that may have changed when you introduced something new, I guess, within a software. And my understanding of smoke testing is checking the overall capacity of the software. That's it.
Right. So if I had to say it in one line, smoke testing is a health check, and regression testing is to make sure that nothing is broken in the application because we introduce a new feature, right? That's like one liner, but again, if you want to go like in deeper, if you really want to think about regression and smoke test, people think like, oh, this might be an individual test, like one test. No, it's like you're going to go to your test case and you're going to find your list of test case, right? Let's say throughout the whole, testing, maybe you guys passed already like 4 or 5 sprint already. And in that time frame, you are able to write, let's say, 500 test cases. So you're going to look at the 500 test cases and you're going to say which test cases should be grouped in smoke, which test cases should be grouped in regression, and then you're going to group them. And the reason why is because whenever there is a need for you to do a smoke testing, you're going to go to that group and you're going to execute, meaning you're going to run those test cases to make sure that you compare with your expected result with actual result. Same thing for regression, but we're not there yet. We're going to create test cases. We're going to basically talk about test cases in the later classes. So we're going to go more and more and more deeper, right? So this overall understanding will help you guys to understand also the next classes. So let's talk about the next non-functional testing. Right off the bat, non-functional testing is actually something that you can actually think about. If you had to guess, what do you think it'll do? Okay, anybody want to guess?
It is testing to improve the how the system working. It's more like the performance.
So yeah, so that could be one, right? Performance and stuff, but let's pick a nice color. 1 second. Okay, so non-functional, like really, if you think about it, look and feel, it does, like when you do look and feel testing, right? It is not functional, but it's gotta be for your eyes, right? It's pleasing to your eyes. The user see it, consistency within the application. That is basically look and feel of the application, right? So, so when we do look and feel testing, it's actually called usability maybe, or it could be like UI testing, for example. So when you do UI testing, is basically you go and see how, let's see, user interface testing, right? UI means user interface, which means if you go into an application, let's go to JetBlue right now, right? And you're looking at the design and everything, and somehow you see everything is fine here. Let me just get rid of these things. Okay. Everything is fine, but the problem is that trouble information. Okay, let me just go and alter this a little bit to give you guys a proper picture. I'm going to create a bug myself, right? So color, let's change this to something else. Okay. All right. So you're testing and you came and you're looking at the JetBlue and you go like, something is not consistent. You know what I'm saying? Like something doesn't add up, which means that everything working fine, functionality wise, you can click on it, it becomes a link and you can do many things. But when you get here, you see these links are white, but then these are red for some reason. It's not consistent. Look at the arrow sign for those drop down is white. You see this text is red, but then these texts are not red, right? So you feel like, something just not adding up. This is more on the UI testing, right? But it has nothing to do with functionality, right? All the functionalities are working, right? So this is basically look and feel of the application, right? Okay. Then you have other kind of testing. So it could be load testing. It could be, testing for user friendliness. Load and performance. Who is responsible for testing load and performance, guys? Who wants to do this guess?
Software developer.
Software tester. You. So
Yeah, QA.
So QA, right? And I may, like, if I have time toward the end, I'll show you how to do that, like how to do load and performance testing. But load and performance testing has their own position, meaning if you are a software QA engineer, it's not necessary that you also know how to do load and performance testing. Okay, it's not necessary because companies, they hire load and performance testers separately. So maybe there are skilled tester who only works with load and performance. So they know better, right? So they basically go ahead and just only focus on that part of the QA testing, and they only get hired for those kind of jobs. So they have separate jobs for load and performance testing. So just to give you an idea, sneak peek how the load and performance testing works is that you write code and you will create virtual users. So instead of saying I have 5,000 users sitting down with 5,000 computers that at the same time they're logging in, at the same time they're doing this, trying to simulate 5,000 concurrent user, you would create those with your code. You would create those 5,000 users using code. So you would actually simulate 5,000 users with virtual users, right? And those users are going to do something that you will tell them to do. So randomly, some users may go and sign up, some user may go and click a link, some user may go and do something, right? So you will design your test to mimic the actual 5,000 users actions in random fashion. And then that would put enough load and stress to the application. And the job is basically to see how well is being handled by 5,000 users. If, let's say, the server is able to handle 5,000 users, they can calculate and see that for 1 million users, what they need to do, right? They can actually calculate that at that point. So load and performance testers, they will basically give an accurate picture to the management, to the managers, to say your application is able to handle this many user, and they will take appropriate action. So for example, 5,000 users is supported, but 10,000 is not supported. And they looked into the issue, and it's a code issue. It's not a server issue, right? The server is not able to, let's say, serve to 10,000 for some reason, right? That's a server issue because now, how do they know it's a server issue? They can actually go to the server side and see, what are the usage, how much CPU is being used on the server side, and they can make a determination whether they want to fix code or they want to fix the server, meaning they want to add more servers or something that is more powerful. So that gives the project manager ability to not only fix the code, but also say, okay, we want to support 10 million customers at all times. So this is the calculation that we did based on our 5,000 users load test. We're going to need this and this and that. So that he will be able to go and have a team who's going to prepare an environment for the production, meaning for the actual users to use. Now, if he doesn't do that, if they don't find load and performance related issues early, what's going to happen is just like Obamacare, what happened, right? They released and everybody jumped in and now it's broken. I just believe that somebody didn't do the calculation or somebody didn't really, or maybe they did, it's just that they didn't expect that many, they did it, but then they probably thought it was going to be gradual, instead of everybody at the same time. So this is also a key part of the testing, and that happens right before release, or that may happen toward the end of the all the way close to release, and they want to make sure that this actually is tested. So at some point, again, like I said, there are testers that knows both, where they know how to do UI, they know how to do testing, writing automation, doing UI testing, but also they know load and performance testing as well, right? There are testers that knows API testing. So we'll talk about those as well. And API testing is something that we're going to teach you guys, okay? So we're going to be fine. So anything that has nothing to do with, let's say, anything that has nothing to do with functionality is non-functional testing, period. So I don't want to load, basically I don't want to write more of that. Just make a guess based on the name itself. Functional is you have to be able to do something to the application and it gives you something in return. That is functional. Non-functional is like the application has nothing to do with, you just go and check and if everything aligns or not. Even verifying that the design document is being followed as accurately as possible is also a non-functional testing. Okay, maintenance is actually, I gotta probably take this out of here actually. even though this is a functional, this falls under functional, but I'll probably, okay, I'll just write it again under maintenance. Okay, so give it a new color, maybe. All right, so maintenance is basically regression. This is the only thing I can think of. Because every time we are trying to introduce a new feature or adding new functionality or even enhance new feature, new functionality, that is maintenance, right? So part of that is when we do that, we want to make sure everything else is working just the way it used to be, even though we made this change, even though we added this feature or this new functionality. So maintenance testing is really about regression to make sure that we have sets of test cases that are specifically testing to make sure those existing feature and functionality is not broken. And that's what we will be testing on the maintenance side. These are 3 classification of testing, but there are a few more. There is like one is called monkey testing, right? Monkey testing is actually falls under functional. And monkey testing is basically, it is funny, right? Monkey testing. And I usually don't expect that kind of question in the interview, but then a couple of days ago, I think like maybe a couple of weeks ago, there was an interview where this question, do you know what is monkey testing? And it was pretty shocking, like, oh, people are still asking for this. But monkey testing is basically nothing but for you to go into different part of the feature and functionality in a non-water. You're not going in water, basically. You're just going and hopping from one to the other, right? You touch one feature, test it, and then what is the other feature associated with that specific feature, and then go into that feature and test it. So it's like you're jumping from one tree to the another tree. So if you want to imagine like how monkey jumps, that's how it probably be an easy way for you to answer. So let me go ahead and see the definition. Don't hear from me. Monkey testing is a type of testing in which software application is tested using random inputs, like I said, with the sole purpose of trying to break the system. So you just jump one to the other and just do as much as you can. This is very much, look at the picture. This is not something that you actually bring a monkey to work, but this is just you trying to break the system, do whatever you can, right? You look into the input output, you jump from one feature to the other, and just to see what really something that you can break. Okay, monkey testing is something that you would probably do it after when you have free time, right? You did your testing, you have some free time. You can tell them, hey, I'm doing some monkey testing, but there is a good names for this too, because I don't like saying monkey testing. There is another one, it's called ad hoc testing, and then spell it correctly right here. So at work, let's say I have some downtime and I don't want to take extra work. I'm just waiting for more assignments, but I don't want to take extra work. I can just tell them I'm doing ad hoc testing, because if you want extra work, you will get it, right? They will probably just say, okay, assign it to him, assign it to him. But you know that tomorrow you're going to get more assignments. But if you take a new assignments, then tomorrow you'll be busy with that assignments and you will not be able to get to the one that you're waiting for. Do some ad hoc, right? Where you would just try to find issues. So let's see what ad hoc means, right? Ad hoc testing is a type of testing which is performed informally and randomly after the formal testing is completed, right? So that means you did your functional regression, smoke test, you did your feature test, and you have some time. Just tell them like you're doing ad hoc testing, and that's totally fine, right? All right, so these are the 3 type of testing right now, the classification of testing. So there are a lot more. So if I give you guys, right, 100 types of testing, right, QA, right, for example, list, type of testing. Let's go into this thing, right? Do you want all of them? Do you want to know all of them? I don't think you need all of them. Like we got black box, white box, maybe we'll cover that. But everything that we talked about now, along with maybe alpha testing, beta testing, black box and white box and gray box. So few we're going to cover, at least 15 of them we're going to cover, because not everything is talk of the town, right, in workplace. So we'll only talk about the ones that people talk about. We'll talk about the ones that is important to you. Just keep that in mind. So you don't have to learn 100 testing types, which is going to be a lot, right? Look at this. Top-down integration testing, bottom-up integration testing, hybrid integration testing, alpha testing, beta testing, equivalence partitioning testing, it's boundary value analysis. So we're going to talk about these. These are testing technique, by the way. This is not only just type of testing, but this is going to make you a better tester, right? So we're going to talk about those and how to use these methodologies or analysis to be a better tester. All right. So let's go into, so we talked about that. I think that covers more like the introduction. So let me just go into that fundamental, few fundamentals. So let's talk about the roles and responsibility right now. We're going to get back to the fundamentals as we talk about the roles and responsibility, because, you know, this is going to be part of our responsibilities anyway. So let's talk about your team, guys, right? And like I said, you can ask all the question you want. So software team or SDLC team, whatever. Software development team. So in your software development team, this is your team basically. Just think for a second that this team is responsible for building out the whole software. There is nothing else. Like there is nobody else outside of this team to coming and writing code and things like that. So you are part of engineering team, and let's talk about each and every person's responsibility, right? So that way we can kind of like have a good idea when it comes about who should do what, right? Otherwise you may be getting confused and ask wrong people the wrong questions, right? So we don't want to do that. So the first one is project manager. And we did this, I think we did this before. So if you guys want to jump in and answer, that would be really interactive. So who's the project manager and what do they do? Okay, I'm going to give you guys 5 seconds more to think about. Okay, so you guys missed your opportunity. So they do the planning, right? Plan and basically developed
It's just like what Scrum Master do, if I'm not mistaken.
project ideas. So we'll get to that because, you know, project manager and Scrum Master, they are two different roles. And recently what I've seen is that project manager is also a Scrum Master, meaning like they wear both hats, but I'm gonna separate them for now. So that way, not only that you know what Scrum Masters do, but also you will know what project managers do. But if the project manager and Scrum Master is the same person, so they will do both of the responsibility. So it'll be easier for you to combine. Okay, so they do so plan and develop the project ideas. That includes budgeting, that includes hiring, that includes firing, that includes hearing from the team to understand the progress and then the budget and see where the whole team is, and then taking appropriate action based off of that. So if the team is behind, the project manager will say, do we need additional resources, maybe additional QA? And you know, any problems that that arises during the development time, they will try to solve that. But more importantly, he will talk to the stakeholders, right? Meaning like, let's say, stakeholders are, okay, so you guys know who is stakeholders, right? It's somebody, or it's a group of people who actually invested in the project, right? They're responsible or at least they're spending time. So stakeholder includes you yourself. Let me just Google that for you guys for a second. Who are the project stakeholders, right? Okay, that was the first question. So there are 4 type: investors, employees, customers, and suppliers. So really like includes anybody who's interested in the project, anybody who has the interest and they want to see the project being successful are the stakeholders, right? So let's see, according to the Project Management Institute, project stakeholders are defined as individual and organizations who are actively involved in the project. Okay, so now this is a very I would say big scope. So that means even a company investing in that project is also a stakeholder. Okay, so the idea is that project manager will have constant contact with stakeholders to make sure that they are satisfied, meaning the product that is being built based off of their interest as well, right? So they will make sure that. So everything that I said, guys, like I said, it's going to be really hard to type in too many things. So just make sure you listen and kind of understand what they are. But this one word probably, one-liner probably would explain most of that. So let me see if I can write a few more before we move on to the next one. Don't want to rush you guys. Okay. So then, okay, we talk about monitoring project progress. Any issues? So basically money related, funds, and problem solvers. So they're like pretty much, they have the ability to increase fund, decrease fund, or whatever. They can go to the stakeholder, say we need more money, whatever is the case, right? And they're part of the budget, so they will make sure that how many people they're allowed to hire, how many people they're not allowed to hire. So these, and also to make sure that how well the whole team is doing. So performance, basically, the performance of the team, the whole team, basically. Okay, so this is who the project manager is, and obviously every people are different. So if the project manager is more hands-on, who also like to go and do code review, look at the code and give suggestions, obviously that falls under different situation based on who is the project manager. So everybody is different, so depending on the individual. So the next person is going to be, I'm going to put in as logical as possible, and then we go from there. So I believe the next one is product owner. Product manager, product owner is the other one. And who's the product owner, right? Product owner basically is somebody who makes sure that they're writing or they're maintaining the user stories or creating the user stories or backlog, right? So product owner could be somebody who has a constant contact with the stakeholders and taking their input and ideas and then putting it into a document, right? So let's see, actually, I'm going to write it here to see who are the product owners, to see at least what the Google says about it, right? A product owner is a role on a Scrum team that's responsible for project's outcome. The product owner seeks the maximum and product value by managing and optimizing product backlog. So their job is to create the product backlog, creating the wish list, right? So again, just keep in mind that those product owner may be getting those wish lists from stakeholders who's really interested into the project itself. So they don't just come up with it themselves. Sometimes they do come up with it themselves, but they have multiple business discussion with the appropriate team members before they can come up with this. So user story or product backlog. They're responsible for product backlog. They will be also responsible for UAT testing, which Google doesn't mention. Right. So they'll create user stories as well. Let me see what else does it say. Vision development and delivery. Okay, that's fine. So product owner in your team is primarily somebody who is going to actively creating the product backlog, and they will do UAT testing because they want to know what they were asking. It's something that they are getting. There's a nice image right here. Let's see what that says actually. Okay, so so maybe, okay, this is good. This is actually good. So let me just talk about that. So they talk about the vision, meaning how the product should be, okay, what it is that they're looking for, how they want it. So they manage the backlog. They do the prioritization on what needs to be done first and what needs to be done second, which is right there. Overseeing development stages, like where is the ticket right now? Maybe somebody's working on QA and how is the process. Anticipating clients' needs. So they will go and communicate with the clients or the stakeholders or anybody who wants to use the product, and they want to see what kind of needs they have in order to build that specific product. And then the product owner will do action as the primary. So that's product owner will be your primary contact. Like product owner will be somebody who will be primary contact for BA, for QA, and for developers. So whenever we have product related questions, you have a suggestion, right? You really feel like your suggestion is going to be the best, right? Then you go to the product owner and say, hey, instead of doing it the way that you are asking for, I think there is a better way. Do you want to have a few minutes of discussion? And if that person says, oh, sure, let me hear it. And then you give them the idea and they like it, that's it, right? So product owner is the one who's going to be responsible of kind of approving changes and allowing things to happen. QA and developers, even BA, we're not the one who's going to describe how the product should be. Okay, we are just there to do our part. QA is there for testing, developers are there for building, and BA is there to take product owners, backlog and make it more readable, make it more, write technical documentation from their point of view. They will also evaluate the product progress, participate in daily scrum. So they will also be in the daily scrum and talk about what they did and what, if there anything struggling with. And then also terminating a sprint, meaning like they will say when the sprint is ended. Okay, so at the end, they will basically say, okay, this sprint is done, it's 2 weeks, everything seems to check out, let's go into the next sprint. Okay, so that is who a product owner is. You will see this person is talking all the time. Okay, you may feel like this person owns the project. You may feel like all the agenda that you're seeing, all the features that are coming, you feel like maybe these guys are kind of like they want this to happen, right? But they just don't go ahead and do it themselves. They go get multiple approvals, they talk to the actual users, they do a lot of research themselves before even these things to be as part of their product backlog, right? So they don't just go ahead and do it because they want few things to happen, right? So just keep that in mind. We don't question product owner too many times. We just say, okay, this is how you want it, not a problem. We'll check for that. That's it. As long as there is proper documentation, we will go ahead and check. Now, if you're testing something and you're missing documentation like user stories, you're missing maybe requirements, that's when you're gonna say, we're gonna basically say we cannot test it. We need to have documentations so you can ask for a photo. But let's go into the next person who's responsible for some of the more technical writings. So the next person is actually, I think, who should I place next? BA first or the Scrum Master? So let's do BA first real quick. And then, so now product owner and BA could be the same person, guys. I'm going to put it separately here. And it's because so that way we can kind of distinguish between them. Product owner and BA could be the same person. Okay, keep in mind. Scrum Master and Project Manager could be the same person. Okay, So don't look for two different people after joining. If somebody says, oh, I'm the product owner, and you're like, oh, so where's the BA? I'm the BA. And you might be like shocked, right? So now let's talk about the business guy. Okay. Business analyst job is to work with product owner and see what the backlog that she's coming up with for this person. Usually, like the reason I say she's because most of the product owner that I work with for over the last 10 years is female. Also, the business analysts happen to be more female because I guess it's about who's doing what kind of major in college, right? So product owners, they're probably more on the business side of the degree that they earned, whatever is the case. So somehow you'll see that more females are on to product owner side and business analyst side. So now, and that's why I'm just keep saying she, but it could be a he. Okay, so don't quote me on these things. So now you have product owner, and business analyst is going to be somebody who will work closely with product owner, take the data and information that they get from product owner and translate that into a technical documents, right? So business analyst, let's just write his responsibility into Google and get some better pointers to talk about. Okay, business analyst, let's see some pointers. Business requirement, scope, status, user requirement. So really think about, he works very closely with product owner, gets the requirement, and then he writes those requirements into user stories, right? And most importantly, he will also help with other documentation like mapping, understanding where the database is, and so let's just read this real quick. Business analysts assess how organization and performing and helping them improve the process and system. So he's there for more on the process side and system side. They conduct research and analysis in order to come up with the solution and business problems. So when the product owner says, I want this to happen, right? I want a sign up feature on my application, for example. I want people to be able to sign up. The product owner doesn't have to say anything else. In this case, business analyst is going to jump in and say, is it something that they can do with the current backend? What are the structure looks like on the coding side? What are the things that they need to create? What are the tables that they need to create in the database, right? So all the technical aspect, he will list, he will create mapping document. He will make sure that everybody understands his documents. So he will work very closely with the product owner to make sure that that wish list is easily readable by the technical members of the team. Okay, so technical documentation, let's say. It could be user story also. So is there more on the documentation? So that way QA can understand, BA can developers can understand the actual user story or document. So whenever I say user story, guys, that's requirement. Okay. In Agile, we call them requirement. Okay. Now the next thing is Scrum Master. Who is the Scrum Master? And everybody, you guys know this, right? So give me some, I don't have to Google this, right? So go ahead and give me the list of things that you guys want to say. Who's the Scrum Master? I can just say single word and that will fulfill his responsibility, right? So he's an agile coach. If I say agile coach, really everything includes in there, because now think about this person have to think about all the meetings that happens in agile. They happen in timely manner. They don't have unexpected topics, and they only talk about things that they need to, and they follow the proper agile best practices, period. Now, Scrum Master, somebody can be also a project manager it really is happening where multiple position is being combined into a single one, like project manager and scrum master, logically, basically, right? So QA cannot be a scrum master, right? Because you have to focus on your side, right? And a QA can be a BA too, by the way, right? So it's called BSA, basically business intelligence, as well as the QA. So you might end up getting a job where not only that you do QA, but you also do BA. So the combination of these position do take place in real life, just keep in mind, but for now, just understand the responsibility of it. Scrum Master is going to make sure that his agenda is all about Scrum, all about following the right process, all about being efficient, understanding if the teams are doing the right things about Scrum and Scrum only, right? He will also make sure that individuals in the team can come to him for any sort of help, like, he needs to set up a meeting between you and another person, then he will do that. If you go and ask him like, hey, I don't really understand this specific feature, he will say, oh, really? Okay, let me see. All right, I'm gonna reach out to David, and I'm gonna see if he has some time for you to go over. But Scrum Master is not technical. He doesn't understand much, right? So he will not be able to help you. He's more like a cheerleader. He's the coach, and the only thing he will do is that connect you with another person who knows what to do. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Number 5. Again, this is your teammates, right? So number 5 is going to be developers. Okay, and number 6 is going to be QA engineers. And I'm going to give you guys some title here, QA analyst, and it's the same thing if you really think about it. QA testers, right? Within the QA organization, you may have QA lead, QA manager within your team, basically, right? So it really depends about the budget and the company's agenda. And you'll see like some companies are following the best practices where they do have all of these roles, right? Some companies you'll see that a person who's a lead is also doing this, level of work. You'll see QA managers also doing QA testings, right? QA manager should be only focusing on managing these guys, right? But instead, he will also do testing is because he's doing both, right? So that's how it is in a team. So this is the whole entire team to do the entire SDLC. So to think about each of these positions fulfilling their part of the job, right? So let me go ahead and actually write those down. How many people remember SDLC? Sorry, SDLC. All right, anybody remember SDLC from the last class? Okay, let's list everything here. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you guys those questions. Okay, let me just go ahead and write it here and then change the color maybe to something else. So with black. Okay, SDLC. Requirement gathering. And okay, so I'm gonna let's make a deal, right? I'm gonna write the phases and you guys, one of you guys tell me who does it and what they do in order to do, requirement. So requirement gathering will include more than just one person. So you want to explain. In the meantime, I go into the next. Okay. Now, guys, we got these 6 phases right here for SDLC. again, SDLC is what, right? Let's see Google definition, because we talked about our definition in the last class. What is SDLC basically? Let's see what they said. Something. Oh, we just talk about phases, 7 phases. So planning, analysis. We combine planning analysis together. Let's just say that design, development, testing, implementation, and maintenance. Okay, development, implementation shouldn't be here, but okay. That's release. Okay. So depending on who you talk to, depending on where you look, you will see that SDLC phase, even though it's similar, but it is quite different. For example, requirement analysis, system design, right? Implementation, which is coding, testing, deployment, which is release, right? And maintenance. So this one aligns with what I wrote. But the only thing that I feel like they could have they could have fixed is that the requirement analysis, right? It should say requirement gathering and analysis, right? Because you have to have the requirement first. But you'll see, like, just make sure that everything that we talked about, it does have a different way of putting it, right? So depending on who you are talking to and who's explaining, they will have their one way of doing it. It's just not that they're different, it's just that the naming, right? They may just even combine 2 into 1, right? So development can include testing and QA at the same time. So now it becomes 4 instead of 5 different stages, phases, right? So the phases, if they do ask you like, okay, how many phases of SDLC, and you say 6 or 7, the answer is gonna be true for both, right? Because again, it depends how you are classifying those phases, how you're breaking down those phases, actually. So just keep that in mind. So now I'm gonna ask some of you guys question. And all you have to do is that for number 1, you want to say requirement gathering, and you want to say like who and who's responsible. Number 2, design. Number 3, development. Number 3, testing, release, and maintenance, right? So just tell me, maybe the release one, I can give you guys a hint. This happens by DevOps team, and design happens by UX designer, okay? Everything else should be fine. And what happened during maintenance? What something that we consider as maintenance, right? So let's test your knowledge right now and see if you guys kind of, understanding it. So who's gonna go first? Let's see. Who should I pick? Okay. If you unmute, that means I'm gonna assume that you want to speak. So I'm gonna pick you. So I did see a few people unmuting. Okay. All right, go ahead, Arafat.
Requirement gathering is normally work with the BA and product owner and and manager. They're the one, the product owner gives all the requirement to business analyst or
Okay. What else? Just tell me like a story, like the whole thing, right? Requirement all the way to maintenance. So you can say, so like, okay, let me ask again, right? And then you start over. The question is, what is software development lifecycle, right? So for example, what is SDLC? And the answer shouldn't be like SDLC is software development lifecycle. You're gonna basically then you're gonna say SDLC is software development lifecycle, which contains phases to develop a software from very beginning to the end. So for example, requirement gathering, which includes product owner and BA to create requirements, and then goes into design phase, which is done by UX designer and their team. And after that, it goes into development, where developers are writing code to make the requirement and design into a machine readable form. And then testing. Testing is basically done by QA engineers and QA analysts, where we compare the actual and expected results to make sure everything is based on the requirement. And then we have release. Release is done by our DevOps teams, and they maintain servers as well. And then it goes for maintenance. Maintenance happens when we add new features and functionalities to the application, or even enhancing the new features or enhancing an existing features or functionalities of the application. So everything that I just said now, I would say it based on your understanding. And this is like a format that I just gave you. I gave you a hint. So what is SDLC?
Oh, you were asking that. I thought you just asked for the requirement gathering.
No. It's I listed. I'm trying to help you guys, right? So I wrote you the list already, so you don't have to think for it. You can just explain what they are and who does
okay.
it.
So you were asking all the requirement all the SDLC life cycle. So
Wait a second. I haven't said SDLC a single time when I ask you the question. So again, the question is, what is SDLC? That's it. That's the question.
okay, is it SDLC is a software development life cycle where include requirement gathering, design, development, testing, release, which requirement done by product owner to the BA design. I'm not sure who does that, but
Keep going. You're getting there. But
develop.
remember,
Yes.
right here, the information that you can use.
Okay. Development is done by the software developer who does that, and come to the testing. This is our job, QA as a QA, to find the bug and test everything and see it's working, and then give it to back. And then release happened, and the maintenance is after the software is released, and just to check everything working, and it's updated, time and time.
Okay, that's good, but maybe you can improve a little bit. Like I said, each phases you can explain a little bit more. Okay, let's pick some more people. I'm gonna start naming now. Okay, so the next is Evelina. The question is, what is SDLC?
Let me see my notes. Hold on. Okay, so it's a software development life cycle that looks like it has 6 to 7 phases. And hold on a second.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you caught me off guard.
No worries. You can also look at the screen on your screen right now and
Oh, okay.
use that
So yeah.
information.
Okay, so it's basically a process of 6 or 7. It has requirements where you're gathering and analyzing. You're doing the overall, I guess, design of the software development, which is coding, and then you have testing. We're testing, right? And then we're releasing the software, and then we're maintaining to make sure there's, through regression testing, I guess.
Yeah. So that is a acceptable answer for SDLC, but we can go beyond that, right? So everybody can, like anybody that actually have an idea what is SDLC, they will be able to answer it this manner or this way. But you can also include these guys, right? You can also include some of the teammates who's going to be part of these process, right? Phases. So for example, requirement gathering, product owner, business analyst, maybe project managers involved, design, UX designer, development coder, which is the developers, and then tester is basically QA. And then release is happening by DevOps teams and then maintenance. So this is not only for you to go out there and answer this question, because rarely you'll hear a question like SDLC, like in an interview, if they ask you SDLC question, that's kind of like more like disrespect, because it's a very basic question. So it's like if you ask somebody who graduated, let's say maybe high school, and you ask them, go ahead and tell me what the ABCs are, then it's kind of disrespect, right? So same thing, these are like ABCs of software testing. So they should already assume that we know, right, SDLC, and that's why we have to be such a good at these two, SDLC and SDLC. That's why I'm gonna try to cover that again, and we're going over it again. So let's talk about the testing next. Again, like I said, we have to get our ABCs correct, so that way we even though like interviewers already assuming you know these things and you have experience with SDLC and all that stuff, we have to kind of make it true, right? Otherwise, you show up in an interview and they're asking a question related to SDLC and you have no idea. It doesn't have to be a direct question like what SDLC is, right? It could be like, oh, so you are in development phase on your coding phase and developers are doing this. What are the things that you can do in the meantime? And you don't even know the order, right? You can say, oh, I'm already testing it. Like, oh, really? How are you testing it if the code is not ready? So think about it, right? So this will, again, we want to create a solid backbone on our side, things that we should know, right? And then we will go into the tools, toolings. And this is something that I say over and over and over again. Learning programming and toolings, understanding how to use tools and technology to make ourselves more efficient is just getting extra help, right? But then we have to be a tester first. And that's hopefully the next 2 to 3 class will make us a tester first. And then we go into the tooling and make ourselves more efficient on doing the testing. So right from here, I know that we have, let's see, testing, go in this. Okay, I don't like this color. 1 second. Okay, so testing has its own life cycle, right? And we're gonna go ahead and talk about it here. And then from there, there is another life cycle, right? So there's 3 life cycles that I want you guys to like really, really know it well. Don't memorize them, just know it, right? Because memorizing is not the solution, especially if you don't have the understanding, you'll end up not be able to answer questions. So just make sure that you are, let's do orange, there you go. Okay, so what do we do as a tester at this point, right? So now developers are done with their coding. They finished with codings and they said, hey, it's ready for testing. Or you went to the Agile Scrum board that we looked yesterday, or sorry, the other class, where we saw that we're able to see the progress of user stories. When we see the user story is ready for testing, the first thing we do, we take the user story, and what do we do? The first thing is we have to study the requirement, right? Because if we study the requirement, we understand what it is that we have to test, right? If you never understand the requirement or the product, you will not be a good tester, period, right? If you don't understand the product, again, if you don't understand the application and the requirement, the chances of you finding bug is almost like, below 50%, right? You might be getting lucky and finding bugs, but every time you go and test the application, you feel like, wow, developers did such a great job and nothing is like, everything is working seamlessly. That's going to be your reaction at all times because you don't know the product, you don't know the requirement. So now in the requirement phase, number 1 for SDLC, let me just go ahead and write that here. SDLC stands for, who wants to?
Software testing lifecycle.
Okay. So now number 2 that we're looking at, obviously, first of all, number 1, we study the requirement. What happens if you don't understand the requirement, guys? So this is a question for Arafat. You read the requirement and you have no idea. It looks gibberish. It looks very technical. It looks like out of this world. What do you do next?
Probably talk with the business analyst.
Okay, business analyst is in Texas on a vacation. What do you do next?
Talk with the manager.
Right away, you.
Oh no, no, no.
you
Actually,
ever heard of?
you're if the team team lead, the QA team lead. Probably.
Okay, so let me give you guys a logical hierarchy, right? Logical hierarchy is that it's always better to ask question to the people who was the last person who dealt with the requirement, right? So who was the last person that dealt with the requirement first? Who was the last person that, actually looked into the requirement? You can tell me that. Who was the last? If it's already in testing, it's basically the requirement is in your hand now because it's in testing. That means who was the last person actually used that requirement?
Developer.
Developers, right? So you ask the developer, hey, do you have 5 minutes to go over the requirement? Because I don't know how you were able to follow that and write these features, but I'm having tough time understanding it. That's one. The second question, you're like, hey, while you're at it, can you also show me what you did? So what's going to happen is that not only the developer is going to explain how the whole feature is supposed to work, he will also show you what he did. Now, instead of you trying to reinvent the wheel and understand, you already know how the feature works. Now you can only focus on breaking the feature. You can focus on testing anything that the developer wasn't thinking, all right? So that's one hierarchy. So you're gonna go like from the bottom to up, right? So now developer is busy. I don't have time. Like I'm working on other things and other items. You know what? I'm in a meeting. So then you go to the next person, right? You don't have to go to the UX designer, but you can if you want to. But the next person for the requirement is actually BA, right? You go to the BA and say, hey, can you help me understand this? Now, remember I said BA and product owner can be the same person. If that is the case for you, then you go to that person and say, hey, help me understand this requirement because if I don't understand this, I will not be able to test it properly. That's it, right? So now BA or product owner will explain to you. That's your ultimate, go-to, right? That's the last. You're basically product owner is your last person, right? That's it. Product owner defines the product, right? So you should be asking that. Now, if you went to the developer and he gave you an answer that does not align with the requirement, that means you cannot trust that answer, even though he might be truthful or whatever is the case, right? You're gonna say, I'll have to double check that with the product owner. You'll have to get their approval also. So now, if again, developer says, hey, this is how it is. I had a discussion with maybe let's give the product owner a name. Let's say Jessica, right? So David is the developer. David says, hey, I spoke to Jessica. We had a discussion about this. It wasn't very clear to me when I was, working on it. So she told me that I can do this and that. But it's nowhere in the requirement writing. Is that an issue, or you just go ahead and say, okay, great, I'll go ahead and follow that? What do you do next? What is the logical thing that we should do?
I'll ask them for send me a written paper, email or something. Or CC or manager.
So yeah, so instead of doing that, you want to also make their life easy, because if you ask them to do something, anybody, right, you'll say, oh, these guys, you don't want a fish to be already fried for you and then feed it to your mouth, right? You want to also do some work. So you'll basically write the note from the developer and you will attach it to the requirement and you will ask your product owner to confirm that if that is true, right? That could be like the easiest thing, because you already discussed with the developer, you already have the knowledge what's really happened. So it's probably easier to say, hey, is it true? These are the bullet points that I have from David. You mentioned these are the changes that is being approved by you. Is it okay? Can you please confirm before I can do the testing? That's better than saying, oh, I need the whole story to be rewritten, or I need the requirement to be reviewed and rewritten again. Now they're going to ask you, what needs to be rewritten? What do you mean? What are the changes and things like that? So now is out of context, right? You're not specific. So it's always better to write your own notes and then have them confirm. Okay, so that way you can move on with your story. Okay, so just keep that in mind. but you will basically go and reach out to those coworkers to make sure that you can do your work and get it done. The next thing is planning. So we talked about planning, that that in Agile, test plan may not take place. So we'll leave that as a placeholder for now, right? Because if you go and look into STLC, one of the phase is planning, test plan, right? So test plan, just keep in mind, test plan includes scope, approach, resources, who will do the testing, what are the test data that you'll be using, who you should reach out to, and risk assumptions and all of that stuff, right? A test plan can be created in the very beginning of the project, and you don't have to create it again and again and again, right? So in the STLC, it's possible that you have a test plan already in place in your team, and you have to just review that time to time to make sure that you understand what needs to be done next. Okay. Okay, let's go into the next one. A test plan will also contain test strategy, which means what do you do specifically to test efficiently, right? It's testing. It's all about testing. What are the methodology that you use for testing? Okay. The next one is test scenarios, creating test scenario. All right, this is where I'm going to ask you guys all the questions that I would like to ask, because that's really, really important. So creating test scenarios for a specific requirement, it's really, really, that's where your bread and butter, right? This is where you come in as a tester to say, I want to cover this, I want to cover that, right? You want to have 100% test coverage as if possible. And how do you do that? If you were to test something, you have to think about all aspects. You have to think about how a device or how a software will be used by the user, and you want to cover every possible angles. So that way the user will not have an ability to break the system because something unexpected they did. So all the expected behaviors you want to include in your test scenario. So now if I ask you to give me a test scenario for login, let's see. To find something login. Okay, let's see. Maybe Facebook. Everybody knows Facebook. So let me go and open up on the side. Incognito. So I don't log in into my own. Okay, so now I'm going to start asking you guys questions, right? So think about the, oh, what did I do? Did I just remove it? Okay. Let's make some guess in the very beginning. So everybody, you can tell me a test scenarios. So looking at this, you got 1 field, 2 field, and 3 fields, right? 4 and 5, right? So you got 5 different fields in this page, nothing else. So you have 5 elements in your page, in the login page. My question to you, how many scenarios can you come up with? At least give me a guess and tell me why. If it's high number, if it's low number, 50, 60, hundreds, what are the test scenarios that you can come up with here? I'll give you guys 5 seconds to give me the numbers. So like I said, educated guess is fine. I don't expect you guys to, already know this stuff. Nobody wants to tell me a number?
10.
Test scenario, right? You're saying 10, okay. But first, if you still want me to explain what test scenario is, I will, and then you give me a number, right? So again, test scenario is, again, every possible way a user will try to log in. So for example, I'm a type of user, I'm gonna use phone number, right? And username and password, done, right? I'm gonna use email address. That's already 2 test scenario, okay? I'm also a type of user who's going to forget my password. So I'm gonna click on this and I'm gonna recover it and try to log in after that, right? That's like 3rd scenario. I'm also a type of user that I forget my password all the time. So I enter my real username and then wrong password, okay, and log in. And what happens, right? And I'm all, wow, somebody's actually, somebody actually exists with this name. But anyway, I'm also a type of user that I just enter wrong username, but then right password, right? And what happens? Let's see if it does find me. That's gonna be crazy. This is a random stuff. Okay, so Facebook is like, the reason why it's loading, guys, Facebook has a huge database, right? So they have to search and find, like, as you can see, they just found this guy. They can't just simply say something. So they're searching for the person. So that's why it does take a time. Now, if I do this, chances of them finding that person is 0, because I'm sure now at least username doesn't exist with this. And if it does, then I would be surprised. But it's still, it's going to go through the database real quick. Millions, billions of records. Look for that username. If it's not there, then it will come back and say, what? This is it. Okay. We might have found a bug, right? But okay. Now, seems like it didn't care about this. It only care about this portion and found that guy, right? Now, hopefully that explained what test scenario is, right? What is test scenario? Let's see. What is a test scenario? Okay, let's see. A test scenario, sometimes also called scenario test. It's basically a document of a use case. In other words, it describes an action that the user may undertake with a website or app, and it might describe a situation that user might find themselves in, and what real system behavior is at that point. So whatever I just said, right? We cannot predict users' action. So what will happen, right? So you gotta come up with this number. So somebody says 10, which is fine. I'll take that as a number. Who wants to say more? And then I'm gonna ask you guys to give me some test cases that we can write. Sorry, test scenarios. Seems like everybody's tired. I should have given you guys a break. Next time, I guess next Saturday, remind me. We will, just because I'm on coffee, I don't expect you guys to, like, you know, be able to do this class 3 hours straight, 2 hours straight without having a break. But nobody else coming up with a number though, right?
I'll create a new account.
So that's just one test case. Like you heard my question, did you? My question is, how many test scenarios can you come up with? Somebody says 10. I'll take that as an answer. What else?
Like around 13 test case.
13 test cases. Okay, so that's 2 answers.
15.
Okay, 15. Okay. All right, so let's see how many test cases there is, right? Think about it, right? I'm gonna now pull out a login test cases. So login feature test cases. And kind of give you guys some idea, because if I was to write all of that down, it would be a lot, right? So interest of time to make sure that we're able to leverage some of the Google research as well. Okay, so the first one is UI test scenarios. 7 functional test scenarios. You got 26. Non-functional scenarios is 9. Performance is 1. And then you have CAPTCHA and cookie. Because it's a login, you have to care about cookie and any sort of CAPTCHA. If somebody's trying to repeatedly try to log in with the wrong stuff, they should see a CAPTCHA, right? So that has its own 9 scenario. So look at how many test cases, guys, or test scenarios do you see? Right? Now let's review some of them. All right, so UI, so let's look at the functional first. We'll come back to this one. Okay, I'm on a book. Okay, all right. Verify that cursor is focused on username. Okay, so if I click on it, is it focused? Do you see the blinking? Okay. focus on the username text box on the page load. That's one. Okay. Verify that tab functionality is working properly or not. So if I click on tab from here, I go into the password, right? So it is working. No, it's working, but I can raise this as a bug right here. If I press tab from here to there, it shows an outline. I'm not expecting that. This is not on the requirement. I can guess this is not on a requirement, like at least educated guess from the testing experience. So this is a bug that they probably didn't test. Like you see right there, this outline is a bug. Bug is not going to be exciting. You might think like, oh, I'm going to find something is totally not working at this. No, it's always going to be like very tiny things that they forgot. Little things that they didn't care about, right? It's never going to be huge because developers are not dumb, right? They're not going to just make themselves look bad. So we just found ourselves a bug by looking into the second test case, guys. Sorry, third test case tab. Okay. Sorry, second one. The third one is verify that enter/tab key works as substitute for sign-in button. So if I enter, so they said username and then password. If I do the tab, it should go to the login. So it says from here, tab and enter should work. It didn't. Okay, it didn't. So now the question will be, well, is that a bug? That is a serious bug. Could be a serious bug depending on what the intention is. First of all, my password ended up showing up even though I click enter. I want to get out of here by clicking on tab, and I click on enter. Oh, okay, I have to do 2 tabs, guys. So you have to understand the application too. So first tab will get out of here, and second tab will get out of here, and third tab will be on login. Okay, so 1, 2, enter. Number 3 test case pass. Okay, test scenario, let's say test scenario at this point. Okay. Okay, it is passed. I'm sure there is a username with this. Okay, so now number 4, verify that user is able to log in with valid credentials. So now you're going to do a login test. You're going to actually have actual user that exist. You're going to know their password. You're going to then log in, right? Oh, wow. Something went wrong. You know what's going to happen? Facebook, somebody who's monitoring, I'm talking about the, they have a specific role, but anyway, this is going to go on their logs and say something happened, right? and they're going to investigate this. Anyway, we're helping them right now by doing this, learning how to test. So somebody who's going to investigate why this happened, actually, they may be able to come up with a solution to fix it too. So that is called reliability engineer, site reliability engineer, by the way, right? So they're just waiting to see these kind of events taking place, because now it's going to report it directly, self-report it to somewhere in their systems. Okay. Now verify that user is able to log in with valid credentials and valid login. That means actual users. Then verify that user is not able to log in with invalid username, but invalid password. Verify that user is not able to log in using valid username, but invalid password. Okay. These are negative test cases or negative test scenario. Okay. You guys want me to go through each one, or you guys kind of get the picture here? We got it, right? Should I give you guys a live example, like real life example, like what does test scenarios means? And this is where you actually become different, right? This is where you become somebody, a QA engineer who has a lot more value in the team, right? If you join a company and you cannot come up with these scenarios and you cannot critically think and say, okay, I want to test this, I want to test that, I want to make sure what happens if these people do this one. And you cannot come up with these scenarios, then you don't really add a lot of value to the team. And don't take that as offensive way. That's what we're going to change, right? This is why you are here, to make sure that you can think more critical. You can come up with more ways of testing. can think about breaking the system. You have to be able to write test scenarios that will at least have some coverage, right? When do you say you have 100% test coverage, right? At least when you have enough test scenarios, at least you think that there is no other way user will be able to interact with this specific features and functionality. And we're just only talking about 5 different fields, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's it. And then a single page that doesn't even have a lot of features. And we're talking about at least here, we're talking about like close to 100 test cases, guys, 100 test scenarios here, right? This level of thinking, this level of details, and coming up with all these test scenarios is going to make you a true tester. Okay, it's not all about reading the requirement, and the requirement says I should just log in. If the requirement says only this, just this 3, and you tested it and be like, oh, it's working, then you really didn't do much because developer already tested this for you. Somebody else already tested this for you. Our value gets added when we say, okay, let's go above and beyond now. Let's go ahead and come up with more test cases, right? Let's think about functional. Let's think about non-functional. Let's think about the recapture. Let's think about performance. All of these, right? So for example, performance doesn't have to be like a tool. You can see how long it takes. So if I click on enter and it takes 5 minutes, are you going to accept that? Are you going to accept this kind of long time? The user has to find out if they can log in or not, and they have to wait 5 minutes. Is that acceptable by the user? No, then it's not acceptable by you as a QA. So just keep that in mind. What makes you a true and better tester and put you aside from everybody else out there is that if you can think critically, think behalf of the end user, and you're a very much a critical thinker to come up with all possible combinations of ways someone will interact with the application, okay? Or interact with this feature and functionality. Makes a difference. Okay. Understood? Any questions on the test scenarios? So you may think, oh, I'm just going to create the test plan. Test scenario is going to be one, few things, and no, test scenario is where you're going to spend so much time. All right. So next is test cases. Create test cases, guys. So create test cases, and I talked about that as well. So actually the difference between test case and test scenario is really not a whole lot. So for example, these are your test scenarios, and then test cases will be like taking each one of them at a time and adding more details. So for example, if you create a test scenario, if you create a test case for the first one, this is verify cursor is focused on the username, then you go into your application. So you're going to have to write, and I'm going to write a sample test case right now for this one, for the first one, okay? So the only difference between test case and test scenario is that test scenario is a single line describing what the user is doing and what is the system response. And test case is basically details. All the workflow steps is already included, right, in the test case, because the idea is that we want to be able to go back and test again and again if we need to. Okay. Let me go back. I'm going to create this one. I'm going to quickly try to finish the test DLC, but we're going to probably pick up from here because I think it's already 2:06. I'm sure some of you guys do have plans and stuff for the day. So let's edit. All right, you know what? It's better. I'll just edit here, right? Test case, simple test case. So you guys have everything in the same place. Okay. So a test case, I'm just gonna basically write a simple one, just to make sure that we think like an Excel sheet at this point. Okay. So I need the text, maybe smaller, maybe 14. Okay. So the first one is steps, right? Second one is that I can think of, right? Because test case really depends on the company and their standard. So they can actually give you a template. So I'm writing a template right now for you guys. And then it can be different company to company, description. And then, why does it keep changing? Okay. Expected result. Actual result, right? And then pass fail / failed, what happened, and then maybe screenshots or comments and stuff like that. I'll write comments. Okay, so a test case is basically you take a scenario and you write everything in like this, right? So let me just open up a test case actually. Okay, there we go. Use that. Okay. Just let me know if I need to make it bigger for you guys. Okay, that's good. Zoom to 100%. What? All right, it's better. Just one. Zoom right there. I got it. Okay, so let's look at the test case, right? Test case template. Just real quick, right? So that way we don't have to end up creating this. But we're gonna remember, we're gonna go deeper into test case as well. So a test case looks like this, right? Where it kind of breaks down to what you're testing. So this could be one where number one, go to the website, right? Make sure page displays. Number two, enter username, right? And make sure that it takes the username, accepts, for example. Number three, so you're really in the test case, you're breaking it down and you're writing all of the steps so that way nobody has to go back and refer to the document. Like they don't have to study the requirement again because the test case already includes so much details. And then test planning, they don't have to look into it. They don't have to look into the test scenario. So really the test cases are the end product, right? That we can actually use in order to execute our test cases. So as soon as you finish the test cases, the logical thing is to do execution, right? Execute test cases. So when I say execute test cases, what do you understand in that case? Somebody answer that question. What do you think execution of the test cases means? It only means is that you now will read the test cases, these test cases. So it says, go to this website, you're gonna go to that website. It will say, you know, make sure it takes this or make sure it takes that, right? So let's see. It says this is for login, right? So the first one is test case, second, okay. So verify the login of Gmail, right? For the test case, it says enter valid username and password. So if you're gonna execute, you're gonna go to the Gmail. Okay, so I'm gonna open up. I'm gonna actually execute this in front of you guys. Okay. The word is big, but it's not that sophisticated, right? So now sign in. So it says go into that and you enter a valid username. So I'm gonna enter a valid username. I did. Okay, and then it says enter a invalid password. Okay. Invalid, right? I did enter an invalid password. So it says need a valid Gmail account to log in. So it says precondition, right? Precondition was to make sure that we have the valid username, but invalid password. So I will click on next. And it's a wrong password. So it says the next one is enter invalid username and valid password. So basically, whatever the test case is telling us at this point, we're going to follow that and see what is the outcome. Okay, what is the outcome? So this specific test case is actually missing the actual result and expected result, pass and fail, and that should be included. So if I go into this one, you can see that it has test case, test scenario, test okay, test cases, and then you have precondition, steps, test data, and executed, and post condition, what happened after execution. right? So you just basically write all the possible details in your test case in a way that anybody can go and follow the steps to be able to execute. So essentially, a test case is a test scenario that you put enough information in a table form, let's say, and specifically you want to provide this information: steps, description, expected result, actual result, pass or fail. So that way, anybody that doesn't have product knowledge, anybody that doesn't understand what the product is or the requirement is, can still execute and tell them pass or fail. Okay, that is the idea. So we'll probably create test cases and get better at it. But for now, understand this is the execution, the way that we are going and out there and doing the testing. We just follow the steps. That's it. Number 6 is log and track bug. Okay. This is where the bug life cycle comes in, right? And we talked about that already, so we're not going to go into that today of the interest of time, but we will always go in the next class before we start. So UAT testing is basically happens by the product owner who accepts it. We already talked about that. And then it goes for release, right? Or at least the, release later, you do post release validation. That's your job. And that's it. And then you move on, right? So these two I'm going to remove for now because this doesn't happen for individual story, right? This happened as part of the SDLC, not SDLC. So basically today's summary is to make sure that you know SDLC by heart, regardless of the methodology, right? I'm talking about agile methodology, which is, again, agile methodology still an SDLC. It's just a different form of SDLC. Okay. Then we have testing, STLC. How does the STLC takes place in waterfall? Same way that agile waterfall happens in here, right? First, there's 3 months you'll spend only on studying requirement. After that, planning. So actually, for testers, waterfall is kind of not a good way to go because now we may be finishing phase number 3 and still don't know anything about the product because we really didn't have any interaction with the product in real time. So waterfall is really not a good idea for testers, to be honest, but there is still companies and government projects that still use the waterfall methodology. So now we talked about STLC. Let's see what else did we missed from our syllabus. Just gonna go back to syllabus for a second. So we talked about, okay, so let's go in there and real quick, guys. So today we talked about software testing more, right? We talked about the QA fundamentals to make sure that, we understand what is our role and responsibility. We talked about the terms, structure, roles, and responsibility also. This is something that I'll probably mark product because the interest of time. The next class, next. So next class, I'll be sure to cover this, right? But we did cover this too, okay? The last 2. So just keep that in mind. We're gonna post the video right underneath here. And the next class when we start, we'll just do this one first before we go into the remaining topics. Any question for the day? If not, then I'll let you guys go. It has been extra time. I think we're supposed to finish at 2, but homework, look out for homework. And I'll see you in the next one. And you have access to this document, okay? So always, you can always go ahead and see what needs to be done. I shared the link with you guys earlier, right? So if you look at the chat, make sure you save that link somewhere. So that way you can always access, even if you're in a train or whatever is the case, and just want to quickly look and see what will be the agenda for the day. So you can do that. But all right, so it seems like you guys don't have any questions. Nobody's saying anything, which is good. And I will see you guys on the next one, okay?
Okay.
All right. Have a nice day, guys.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right.
Thank you.